Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit and the two-sided limit as x approaches 0 of cosecant of x times cotangent of x. Each of these involves the limit as x approaches 0 of cosecant of x times cotangent of x. The first thing to do is try plugging a 0 in for each of the x's. That will give the cosecant of 0 times the cotangent of 0, which equals to, the cosecant of 0 is 1 over the sine of 0, and the sine of 0 is a 0. So that's 1 over 0. The cotangent of 0 is the cosine of 0, which is a 1, divided by the sine of 0, which is a 0. We can multiply the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1, divided by multiplied denominators. 0 times 0 is 0. The 0 in the denominator is not actually a 0, since x is only approaching a 0 here. It never reaches it. But a limit result of a non-zero number over 0 is equal to either positive infinity or negative infinity, where the sign of the infinity often depends on the side that the limit approaches from. Therefore, we have to work out each of the one-sided limits separately. We have the left-sided limit indicated by the negative superscript on the 0. And the right-sided limit indicated by the positive superscript on the 0. Let's start with the left-sided limit. The first thing to do is to rewrite the trig function so that we can see where the 0 in the denominator is coming from. The cosecant of x is 1 over the sine of x. The cotangent of x is the cosine of x over the sine of x. We can now multiply the numerators. 1 times cosine is cosine. And multiply the denominator. Sine times sine is sine squared. Sine of 0 is a 0, so as x approaches 0, it's the sign that's making 0 in the denominator. We can now analyze a little bit closer according to the side it's approaching from for this denominator. X approaches 0 from the left side. Left side of 0 is a negative angle, close to 0, but negative. That puts it in the negative first quadrant on the unit circle. The negative first quadrant is the same trig results as the fourth quadrant. It's in the fourth quadrant for trig results, but it's a negative angle instead of a positive angle. The sign in the negative first quadrant or fourth quadrant is a negative number. But it is approaching to 0 here. Sine of 0 is 0, so we can replace sine with a negative 0. The 0 then can plug in for all other x's. That means the result of this will be the cosine of 0 in the numerator, but the sine can be replaced with a negative by being a negative number, and 0 since it's approaching 0. And then squared because of the sine squared. Cosine of 0 is a 1, a negative squared is a positive, 0 squared is a 0. The numerator is a positive 1, so we can put a positive up there. Positive over positive is positive. Non-zero over 0 is infinity, and there is the result of the left-sided limit. The right-sided limit can be worked out in a similar fashion. Replace cosecant with 1 over sine, cotangent with cosine over sine. Multiply numerators, multiply denominators, and now analyze according to the side it's approaching 0 from. This time we're approaching to 0 from the right side, which is going to be greater than 0, or a positive angle. That will put it in the first quadrant, and that denominator sign in the first quadrant will be positive. It will approach 0 as x approaches 0, so sine of 0 is 0, but sign can be replaced with a positive 0, and then 0 can plug in for all remaining x's, which will give the cosine of 0 over a positive 0 squared. Cosine of 0 is a 1. Positive squared is positive. 0 squared is 0. The 1 in the numerator is a positive 1. Positive over positive is positive. Non-zero over 0 is an infinity. And there's the result of the right-sided limit. The two-sided limit depends on the results of the two one-sided limits. They match each other here. So the two-sided limit up here will be also positive infinity. And there is the results of the three different limits.